So, hello everyone. I'm in conversation today with Anna Loftus, who's joining us from the University of Limerick, who's going to tell us about her virtual exchange experience. But before we get stuck in, Anna, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you're studying, and anything about yourself.
Hi, my name is Anna Loftus, and I'm currently a third year student in the University of Limerick, and I'm studying the BA Arts for English and French. So I took part in the exchange when I was in my first semester of second year in university.
Okay. Anna, I understand from your tutor that the virtual exchange was a bilingual exchange between the University of Limerick and the University of Paris-Saclay. So tell us a little bit more about that virtual exchange. What was it called? And tell us a bit about the structure of it and what you had to do.
Yeah, so we started off the virtual exchange in September and it lasted for the whole semester.
Oh, that's a long
And
one.
the layout of it was we had three different tasks and we had kind of like 3 or 4 weeks to complete each task and submit them. So because it was bilingual, it was kind of left between myself and the students in Paris-Saclay to decide what way we do the kind of ratio of English to French. Um, so for me, I actually had two partners from the University of Paris-Saclay. So it was interesting. I actually ended up spending a bit more time on the exchange than some other classmates because I had the two. But I think, to be honest, having two partners made it slightly less daunting. And it made it a bit less awkward because, at first, when everything is online, it can be a bit unusual speaking to somebody you've never met before. So having the three people did make a difference. I think it was nice.
Going back a step, did you have synchronous meetings, like, for example, on Zoom with your partners and asynchronous work to do? How did you work together as a team?
Yeah, so we used to do video calls on Teams. We did those about three times, I think, and they were quite long. They were kind of an hour and a half long. And then we used to take notes during that from speaking to each other and go separately then and work on our project work. But oftentimes we might have had more questions, or I know myself, I kind of wanted to check that my French was correct. So I send them a text message and ask them to maybe look over a section of my project and see what they thought of it. So yeah, a bit of both. Some work on your own and some collaboration.
So you had multiple channels of communication. You had video meetings, you had text, WhatsApp groups, or whatever going on, multiple
Yeah.
tech platforms. Okay.
Yeah, it was great. It was a really good experience at the start. I was really nervous about it. I wasn't sure how you kind of figure it out, but it worked out a lot more seamlessly than I thought.
So presumably the idea was for you to speak as much as possible in your target language, which is French, and for the French students to speak in English. How did that work out? Is that actually what happened? Did you get a chance to practice your French as much as you would have liked?
I did actually. What we decided to do was if we were doing like a 30-minute call, we'd do the first 15 minutes in French and the last 15 minutes in English so that both people got the opportunity to like improve their language. So I enjoy that. It was quite daunting because I found their level of English was often better than my level of French because they've been studying it from such a young age. But we were both like we were all very supportive of each other, which was really nice and helpful. Like if I couldn't remember a word or if my verbs were incorrect, they'd help me and correct me, but in a nice way, not in a way that I felt like I was doing badly in the conversation. Which was nice. And it also, in terms of language, it really helped me to learn kind of like, I suppose, slang terms that young people would use more every day. There were oftentimes they'd be speaking to me and I didn't know what a word meant, and they'd explain that they use it in everyday conversation. So that was a great opportunity because you don't get that from your lectures and your tutorials in university.
Yeah, that's really, really nice and helpful. I was just wondering, I mean, it sounds like you were very disciplined, the first 15 minutes in French, the last 15 minutes in English and very motivated and, as you say, supportive of each other. How did you create, what did your tutors do anything to enable you to create that atmosphere, that supportive atmosphere and getting to know each other?
Yeah, so we used to have a weekly class in college where we met with our tutor and kind of discussed our progress and discussed what the learning outcomes should be for the module and what they were expecting from us. And my tutor was excellent. She told us from the very first week that she'd advise when we're starting out, kind of set not rules as such, but have that conversation of, will we set a time each week that we'll meet, and how will we make sure that we both get to improve our language skills from this? Um, so my tutor was really helpful, and anytime, because there were times, especially when you've three people, where maybe someone isn't pulling their weight as much as others, and they were always very good in like saying to us, you don't have to, deal with that and be texting them and not getting replies, that to contact the tutor and they'd make contact with the other university. So yeah, it meant that I don't think anyone was ever frustrated doing it because we had the support of the tutors. It ran quite smoothly.
And on the topic of motivation, was that ever an issue? I mean, what was it? Was this virtual exchange mandatory for you, and therefore that was a motivation, or was it just something that you could choose to do?
My virtual exchange was mandatory, but I was really looking forward to doing it when I was told we'd be taking part in one. I didn't know you could do that in university. So I was delighted to learn that we had that opportunity. And I know for my partners, it was uh, volunteer, like they put themselves forward for it. So they were very motivated and really wanted to get the most out of the experience.
Oh, that's good to hear that there was, mandatory and voluntary, the motivation
Yeah,
to kind of be equal on equal terms.
yeah, exactly.
So, presumably, you felt a little nervous before embarking on this because you didn't know people, you hadn't engaged online, you're using French, all these things. So, how did you experience the virtual exchange? What skills do you think you gained by undertaking a virtual exchange like this?
Well, I think I gained a lot more confidence in myself, in my ability to speak French, and even my ability to understand. I always kind of thought, if I was speaking to French people, they wouldn't know what I was saying, or that it would take me too long to respond. So, definitely my conversational skills improved, and my confidence did. And also, it's not so much language aside, but my like tech skills really improved. I never had to like send someone a link for an online meeting before, or we also had to do a podcast for one of our tasks, which when you're in two different countries is quite difficult to do. So we had to learn to use all the different tools for creating that. And two people being in Paris and one being in Ireland to do that. Um, and then I think really one of the main things I found I got out of it was my grammar improved, from speaking and from having the help of the students, like when it came to asking them to look over a written work piece I'd done. Um, they really helped bring that along. And we were all very patient with each other as well, I think, which helped. Like if we had a moment where we couldn't figure something out, they didn't rush me to get to the French or kind of cut in and just give me the answer. We kind of gave each other the opportunity to make those mistakes. And it took at the start, like the calls did take a long time because we were all kind of nervous to speak and a bit awkward and kind of afraid of our like language skills. But by the end of the exchange, it was like our conversations were much faster and just yeah, much more easygoing.
Fantastic. You spoke about a podcast. Was that the joint project that you had to produce at the end, or were there other pieces of work and other projects that you had to deliver throughout? What was the content?
Yeah, so our first task was we had to do like a presentation on our partners. So we had to meet with them online and kind of talk about just our interests and our college life and just about ourselves. And then we sent each other pictures as well of like us doing our hobbies and our favorite places and things like that. Um, and then went away and worked separately and created a presentation each. And that presentation had to be multi-modal, so it had to include pictures, text, and either a video of you speaking or audio recordings. So that was a nice kind of icebreaker because it got us talking, and we also had the task to work on. So we had our checklist kind of as we were having our conversation. And then yeah, the another task we had to do was the podcast. So for that I had to give them something that was Irish, either like a poem or a song or a piece of writing, and get them to listen to it and interact with it and give me their feedback. And then they did the same. So I give them a song by the Irish band Picture This. And then they asked me to do some research into the Eiffel Tower because of its importance in France. And then, so we did that research separately, and then we all came together and did a podcast and discussed, so we kind of did in our target language. So they asked me questions in French, and I did most of the talking. And then we did another podcast, entirely through English, where I was kind of the interviewer, and they were the interviewees practicing their English.
It sounds really varied tasks, very tech, very things that you had to try out. So the learning must have been really, really fantastic.
Yeah.
What about any challenges?
I think probably the biggest challenge was trying to find time for all of us to sit down and do the calls because they were on their timetable in France and I had mine here. So that was probably the biggest challenge, was trying to fit the virtual exchange into our college lives. And then I think other than that, like once we got over the initial kind of nervous stages, it was much easier. I did find, because I had two partners, one was more motivated than the other, and one like would always show up for our meetings and always be there to do the tasks with. And it probably helped as well because for her to be more motivated, because we were both females doing it, so we'd more in common. Whereas my male partner it was a bit more awkward because we'd less similarities to kind of discuss. But yeah, I think once we got over the like timing challenges, it was easy enough to do.
Before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to share about the virtual exchange? Anything that I haven't asked you? What advice would you give to others considering doing the virtual?
I think if you're given the opportunity to take part in a virtual exchange, you most definitely should. It does seem like quite a large workload and kind of daunting at the beginning, but it really does pay off. In terms of language skills, it's a super opportunity. It's really as close as you can get to doing an Erasmus or being in the university in Paris. So yeah, I'd most definitely recommend it to other students.
Thanks so much for your time today, Anna. It's been really
Thank
nice.
you for having me.